Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Lake Olona, and this is Nashville. Middle Tennessee is a beautiful place that many of us are happy to call home. Look outside your window, and it's pretty easy to discern that we are not the only ones. So much wildlife lives right here, from the smallest of animals like chipmunks and salamanders to larger animals like foxes, owls, hawks, even bobcats. These animals have been here and are doing their best to live in a world that's changed around them as Nashville continues to grow. Unfortunately, interactions with humans or vehicles, our yard decorations, even our pets can be harmful and even deadly to our wild neighbors. So today, we're talking with local wildlife rescue experts to learn about what we should do if we do encounter an injured or wild animal, how local resources and rescues rehabilitate and release the animals they care for, and the small steps that we can take to help protect these animals. So we're going to start off with Johanna Johnson. She's the animal care manager at Walden's Puddle Wildlife Center of Great Nashville, and Jerry Vandiver. He is a trained volunteer who's been working with Walden's Puddle for nearly 8 years. Johanna and Jerry, welcome to This Is Nashville. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. We're thrilled to be here.
Really excited to have you here because, you know, it can be a really magical experience to see a fox, maybe even hear an owl. I hear owls all the time, particularly when it gets cold in my neighborhood, you know, and it's a little bit easier to take small animals like squirrels or rabbits or a raccoon even for granted. But they're all wild animals. And, you know, there's a lot more than just them here. Can both of you tell me just the types of wildlife that live here in Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, definitely. So we can start with our mammals. We got the larger guys like coyotes, foxes, bobcats, and going down to we got some raccoons, squirrels, rabbits,
possums,
groundhogs, possums, chipmunks, moles, voles, shrews, you know, the list keeps going. Then we have our birds. So we have the hawks, eagles, owls, vultures, down to, you know, your common robin, wren, mockingbird, hummingbird, woodpeckers, and then the reptiles like we get a lot of box turtles, and then there's different species of aquatic turtles and snakes as well.
A lot of snakes.
Yeah.
A lot of snakes.
We don't get a lot of amphibians.
Okay. I've seen some armadillos out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They started to move up the last several years from the south.
Yes.
With climate change, I think, having a profound effect in that regard. Yeah.
Well, tell me this, Jerry. What are some of your favorite wildlife to witness here?
Well, I used to say when I first volunteered for Walden's Puddle, it was hawks and owls, but I kind of by default have migrated into fox rescue, and I have really come to admire and love those animals. So whenever I see a red fox, especially a healthy one, it makes me smile. I'm a real fan of them.
You know, a few years ago, I recognized a trend of people domesticating foxes. Do you think that's a wise idea?
No, I'm completely against the idea. They're meant to be wild. They should stay wild. Most animals don't adjust well if they're kidnapped from a den, like if someone took a little fox kit, and we've had that happen before. And once they get a little older, they don't adapt well to a domestic situation. So no, they're wild animals. They're meant to stay wild.
And Joanna, what's your favorite wildlife to witness?
Probably raccoons.
Yeah.
They are so smart. They're so intelligent, really curious, have great memories, can solve so many problems and puzzles.
And
they are
entertaining, too.
absolutely just the most chaotic troublemakers like you could imagine. And I love it. Like they are so fun. They get their little hands on everything.
Yeah.
And they're also obviously extremely cute.
They are very cute.
Not hurt.
Skunks, I think skunks are pretty cute as
They
well.
are
Yes.
too. Yes.
Yes.
Most people, you know, have an opinion of them because of, you know, their power as a skunk and what they're able to make people smell. But if you observe them, they're kind of like cats, like really, really adorable cats.
Yeah.
Something. All right. So, you know, Walden's Puddle is the largest wildlife rescue and rehabilitation center here in Nashville. Joanna, can you give us a sense of the scope of Walden's Puddle. Tell us what kind of animals you care for and how many animals, in estimate, do you help each year?
So we care for all the animals that I listed earlier. It's a massive variety. We are reaching around 3,500 animals a year.
Wow.
And it increases every year.
3,500, and it increases every year.
Yeah. Because it's a matter of, one, just spreading awareness. More people know that we exist. But then also Nashville's developing so rapidly. And so that's more habitat loss and fragmentation. And that leads to people interacting and being around animals more, and then animals being in situations where they need more help.
Well, 3,500 animals a year and growing requires a lot of people to help. About how many staff and volunteers do you have?
We have 4 full-time staff and around 10 part-time staff members. For volunteers, last year we had about 90 volunteers with a total of 2,500 hours put in. Jerry was one of our wonderful volunteers also.
Jerry, you're like almost up for the award for most dedicated
Yes.
and highly trained volunteer with Walden's Puddle. Tell me, how did you get started?
It was kind of fascinating. For me anyway, I've always been aware of Walden's Puddle and their mission and always admired it. I'm an active and wildlife advocate as well as a camper and canoeer and such, so I'm an outdoors person as well. We had a broadwing hawk, a fledgling broadwing hawk, grounded in our backyard, and we called Walden's Puddle to rescue it, and we were able to bring it in, fortunately. And I remember once I brought it in, I just got a look around the facility, and I said to my wife, "It's time to volunteer and be a part of this culture." And so not long after I did, and I started out by doing laundry and folding towels and feeding turtles. And the next thing I know, hey, there's a hawk out in, West Haven. Can you go see if you can rescue it? And so hawks and owls. And then the next thing I know, we had a fox mange epidemic. Okay. And I kind of stepped into that, and it's really become a mission for me.
About how many hours a month do you put in?
Well, that depends actually on the actual time of year. From about May through September, about 120 hours a month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. But it doesn't. I don't feel overwhelmed so much as I feel like I'm really partaking in a mission that has a special outcome that's important.
Is the household into this? Is your wife behind it?
She's all about it. There's every once in a while, I will see on a camera that I've caught a fox in a trap at 2:00 in the morning, and I'll go up and go bring that fox into Walden's Puddle, and my wife will wake up and go, "Did you catch a fox last night?" Yep, I did. And no, she's very supportive. Yeah, and my dogs are supportive of it too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of the animals Walden Puddle's rescues are put on their radar due to calls from the public. And recently, This Is Nashville managing editor Tasha A.F. Lemley went out to a near busy interstate with Jerry to retrieve an orphaned bobcat kitten and set a trap for another. We're going to take a listen to that experience.
We just rescued a orphaned bob kitten, and I'm taking it to Walden's Puddle. I'm sure it can be brought back to good health, and then we're going to have to find a place to release it because obviously right here is not a good place for it.
And this little guy was pretty darn cute.
Only you would say that, Tasha.
Oh, come on.
No, he's very cute, but he's wild. So always remember that.
Okay.
We know there's a second bob kitten here because it's been seen. So we're setting another trap up with bait in hopes of catching it as well. Sardines and raw meats, because that's what they eat. So we'll go all the way back there. And then I'm going to leave a trail out here so the animal will follow the trail into the trap. And unfortunately, I don't have my gloves. Oh, wait a minute. I do have some gloves. Hold on a minute.
He's going back to the car, risking life and limb on the side of the interstate to get some gloves so his hands don't get stinky sardines on them. gave the trap pine needles?
I like to pad the wiring so that they don't feel that they're stepping on something unusual.
Yeah.
The good news is it's a kitten, and they're not as wary. I've caught bobcat kittens much easier than I've caught bobcats. Okay, so this trap is set. We're done.
All right, the world wants to know, what's the status of that bobcat kitten? How did it end up, Joanna?
She's the one that cared for it.
She is doing so well. She came in extremely critical condition. We were all really worried about her. The first few days especially, she was extremely emaciated, dehydrated, had parasites. You know, she had obviously been an orphan for a good amount of time. Mm-hmm. But with critical care and stabilizing her, we were able to bring her back to good shape. And she is now in an outdoor enclosure, eating lots and lots of rodents. And she has all that attitude. So she's feeling good.
She's feeling real good.
Yes.
She's got her sass back.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
she does.
All right. I do want to go over some of the basics, like what we kind of need to know, what to do if or when we encounter an injured wild animal. Like what should and what shouldn't we do?
So first of all, I just want to say that human safety does come first. So if you're like Jerry on the side of an interstate, please be extremely careful.
Yeah.
If you're running across the interstate to get a hawk, you know, a lot of our coworkers have been in that situation. Mm-hmm. But so if you find an animal, what should you do? Mm-hmm. So do you want to know like the way of like catching them, or after you have them, things we recommend? Let's
say this. I'm driving down 65 and I see an injured hawk, a hawk clearly trying to fly, take off, but it can't. And I can see with my eyes that this hawk is injured.
Yes.
What steps should I take?
So first you want to contain the animal as you can do it to keep yourself safe. With any wildlife, you want to try to not directly touch them with your hands because, you know, wild animals are full of bacterial, fungal, viral, parasitic diseases and infections. And so you don't want to have any contact with you and the animal. And so that extends to if you do have an animal, you don't want it to be like a baby raccoon. You don't want it to be playing with your kids, or you don't want it near your pets even. So that's really important to keep that separate. So you can grab, if you have gloves, that's great. You can grab a towel or a blanket, throw it over the animal. Be careful, especially if it's a raptor, obviously, of their talons and their beak. So if you have like a really thick towel, that's ideal. Or sometimes you can kind of shoo them into a box or a crate. And then once you have them contained, that's when you want to call a wildlife rehabber. You can go on TWRA. They have a list of all the rehabbers, and you can look up who's closest to you. Or you can also go online, and there's also an app called Animal Help Now. And they'll direct you to who you need to call. And you can call around a few different rehabbers, and then whoever gets back to you first will they'll take the animal or they'll refer them to the best place the animal needs to go to.
When somebody contacts you about an animal, how do you determine like if the animal needs help or human intervention or not?
So pictures and videos always help. We do a lot of texting. So there's steps to that. If there's obvious injuries, wounds, you know, gushing blood, maggots, fly strike, things like that, it clearly needs to come in. If it's been in a predator's mouth, like cats or dogs, it also needs to come in. Or if it's extremely friendly, like if there's a baby squirrel running up to you, running up your leg, that's not normal. Something's wrong. It should come in. But beyond that, so that's why we want you to call us before intervening, so we can help determine if it's truly an orphan, and then if it is an orphan, if it can be, it wouldn't be an orphan. If you can reunite or renest it. Okay. And so that's possible a lot of times with babies. Like with squirrels, you can leave them at the base of the tree, and sometimes the mom will come get them and bring them back. So that would be something that you work closely with us to determine the next steps.
Now, Jerry, as you mentioned, over the last 5 years, you've been rescuing a lot of foxes out here.
Yes.
In the area, and they've been suffering from mange.
Yes.
Can you tell us what's been going on? What is that?
Well, sarcoptic mange is the specific name of the disease. It's actually caused by a mite, which is like a flea that's naturally on the animal anyway. And a healthy fox doesn't have a problem with those mites, like a healthy dog doesn't have a problem with the fleas. But what happens is that when a healthy fox eats a rodent or game that has had some pesticides in it, and the easiest way to say that it would be the rise of pesticides in the food chain are human caused. And what happens is that especially rodenticides, which are the scientific name for rat and mouse poison. So let's go there. So someone puts out a rodenticide for rats and mice that in their house or around their area, and the rat or mouse eats that poison. It doesn't initially kill the animal. It slows them down and makes for easy prey for a hawk or an owl or a fox to eat it, which is what happens. If a fox ingests a poisoned animal, their immune system becomes severely compromised, and the mites that I mentioned earlier that are naturally on the fox start to take over, and they multiply, they lay eggs, and they dig into the skin. The skin falls, the hair falls off. You might even see a fox that appears to be squinting because there's a lot of crusty excretions from the mites around the eyes of the fox, and it eventually will kill the fox. It's a long, painful, excruciating death. The good news is that mange is treatable with medications and electrolytes and vitamins and minerals and such. And if we can intervene by capturing the fox, we can cure it and, joyous occasion, release it back into its wild home again.
How long does it take to treat a fox normally? 4
to 6 weeks, roughly. Sometimes a little longer, depending on the severity of the mange. I brought foxes in that really are just have the beginning of it, and we've released it a few weeks later. Or there's some, like we recently released a fox. I think that was about 6 weeks because it was pretty severe.
You know, you both are so dedicated to this. What keeps you into doing this work so long, as long as you have been? Jerry?
Well, for me personally, it's seeing them heal and releasing them back into the wild. When I love seeing the before and after pictures, and when I have usually the caller, I usually have them open the crate that we have the fox in, and that fox dashes out, and sometimes they actually look back at us. Oh. Yeah, it's really great. Almost like a thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Disney moment thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Probably isn't, but that's what I like to think that it is. Yeah.
Joanna?
I completely agree with that. It's a transformation, seeing an animal come in that can't even stand up, is head hanging down. You're not sure if they'll make it through the night. And then seeing them recover and then they're released, them fly back into the wild is just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And then I also, for me, I feel a sense of responsibility and obligation just because the vast majority of animals that come in are either directly or indirectly because of human causes. And so I feel like, you know, what we do, it gives us a chance to make a little difference, to take away from the massive harm that humans are causing.
Yeah.
Joanna Johnson is the animal care manager at Walden's Puddle Wildlife Center of Greater Nashville, and Jerry Vandiver is a trained volunteer who's been working with Walden's Puddle for nearly 8 years. Jerry, thank you so much for being here. And Joanna, we're going to check you back out later in the show.
Sounds good.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to learn more about the rehabilitation process for wild animals, from rescue to release. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com. Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Welcome back. Today, we are talking about how we can protect and peacefully live with our wild neighbors here in Middle Tennessee. All right, so here to tell us more about the wildlife rescue and rehabilitation process are Debbie Ceicys, the director of the Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center, and Molly Mays, the wildlife educator and program coordinator for Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center. Well, Debbie was a former guest of the show. Good to see you again. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for being here. And Molly, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having us.
Really great to have you both here. All right, so Debbie, can you tell us a little bit about the Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center? Tell us what kind of animals you receive and care for.
Yeah, so primarily we're kind of more like wildlife support. We do primarily education outreach. We do a lot of conservation and coexisting. So if people have issues with mice in their house, those types of things, teaching them how to coexist and get those mice humanely out. But then we also have that wildlife hospital. We focus on species of conservation concern. So our reptiles, amphibians, and then a lot of songbirds. So right now we're getting hit pretty heavy with our migratory songbirds.
Yeah? How many about?
So to give you an idea, like millions, depending on the night, will migrate through Nashville. And unfortunately, a lot of them end their destination just with the building strikes and things in downtown Nashville. But if they're still alive, people call us and we help those birds continue their journey.
I'm curious about how you both got involved in animal rescue. Deb?
Well, so you just had Walden's Puddle on. That's kind of where I started. And, you know, Joanna talked about how we're seeing more and more animals in the hospital every year. And that's great on paper, but when you're the person who's down in the trenches and doing the work and seeing these animals over and over again, these injuries are pretty brutal and a lot of them don't make it. And eventually you just want to do something about it. I hope to do wildlife rehab for the rest of my life, but it is kind of a Band-Aid. So we started Nashville Wildlife Conservation to swim more upstream and educate the public, teach them about the wildlife that's there so that hopefully we can prevent those types of songbird window strikes and turtles that are getting hit by lawnmowers, those types of preventable injuries.
Yeah. Well, now, Molly, how did you come to this work?
That's a great question. I feel like I've always been very animal heavy in all of my studies I've done. And I actually started volunteering in Chattanooga where I went to college. And from there, I fell in love with the reptiles and birds that we took care of at Camp Wilderness. And when I moved back home to Nashville after graduating, I found Debbie with Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center, and I felt it was just a perfect fit to be able to help educate while also learning more about the animals here.
What do you love the most about it?
Education-wise, I love talking to the people who didn't even realize what an animal in Nashville looks like. A lot of times we learn about animals far off in different countries and different continents, but here in Nashville, there's so much wildlife we could learn about and learn to coexist with as well.
Okay, so I've heard that one of the animals you've cared for is Horton, an eastern box turtle, and he's now an animal ambassador, so he stepped up in the world. Tell me a little bit about his journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Horton is one of our eastern box turtle animal ambassadors, and he actually was hit by a truck on the highway, and we had him with lots of injuries previously that had occurred, but some new injuries, including eyes and shell injuries, actually impacted him pretty heavily, and he had to have his left eye removed, and he has a permanent crack in his left shell. And so we actually had to do a lot of care for him and rehabilitate him. And Debbie is excellent in being able to do a lot of care to make sure that they get right back on track. And we actually try to release him because we do a radiotelemetry study to see how they do after our care. And unfortunately, he failed release, which deemed him non-releasable. So he joined our education program and gets to go out to the community and help teach about our wild neighbors, which is sometimes really interesting for people to make a visual connection with when it's hard to see them.
Does he seem to be enjoying this new role?
I would say he definitely does. I would say it's like getting a personal chef and maid to look after you every single day in comparison to humans.
Yeah.
And with his eye missing, he has a depth perception problem. And so I like to hand feed him snails to help supplement his diet since he has a hard time seeing.
And personal chef, I'll sign up for that any day. If you need somebody, let me know. Okay, so you're a wildlife educator, so you're regularly out with people, informing them about the animals that live in the region, like you previously told us. Tell me this: what really seems to surprise people the most about the information you're sharing with them? What are they learning that blows their minds?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, I have encountered so many people who don't reach out to animals or know anything about animals, and they are suddenly introduced to this new animal and they say, this is here in Nashville. Eastern box turtles are our state reptile, and they're amazed that this guy is very common around here. Though in decline, these animals could be seen all around in our backyards, crossing the roads, and it's really awesome that I get to just be able to make that connection for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Debbie, tell me this. You all, the rehabilitation process, taking an animal to a licensed wildlife rescue center. Once you receive an injured or a sick animal, walk me through what happens next.
It really depends on the species, but our expertise really is songbirds and turtles. So just taking turtles, for example, the number one issue that we see with them is lawnmower strikes. And I did bring a turtle shell, which I know is hard for people to necessarily see, but you can, if you just look up a picture online, you've got just right down the center their spine. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine if you have a lawnmower go over that, especially with how low we like to trim our lawns, that cuts right into that spinal cord. So part of that is making the wound better, but a really big part of what we do is physical therapy for our turtles, which is pretty niche. And so, teaching them how to use their back legs again. And we found even if their spine is severed, there is hope for them to learn how to use their back legs.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Lekalona. We're talking this hour about animal rescue and rehabilitation. My guests are Debbie Ceicys and Molly Mays. All right, so Debbie, what guidelines or rules does your staff follow when interacting with wild animals?
Great question. We work extremely hard on keeping their stress low, on allowing them to have integrity and dignity. So we're not holding them, cuddling them, those types of things. They don't want anything to do with that. So we provide a quiet area. We try to make their enclosures as natural as possible. And then just watching the animal individually, because we can learn how to meet their needs if they tell us, if a bird is flying against one part of the screen, we learn, okay, this is where we need to put the perch. Mm-hmm. And so it does take a lot of training. Molly is our only paid staff, so everybody else is volunteers. So they're donating their time to train on these things, to learn these things. They spend a lot of time learning so that they can provide these animals.
I'm curious about how the animals adjust to being in care from animal to animal. Are there certain ones that kind of adapt to it rather quickly and other ones that are a little bit more difficult, or do certain ones do better all the way around? Molly?
Definitely there are certain animals that are going to be higher stress species. Debbie's worked with a lot of them, so I think she'd be able to give you that species by species call.
Yeah, so in general, again, just being able to read the individual animal, there are certainly ones that have a hard time getting used to captivity. And ultimately, not every animal wants to be in captivity either. I would say Horton's like our one exception from any wild animal we've ever rehabbed that has enjoyed captivity.
He's got a chef.
Yeah, he's got a chef. He loves, for some reason, he loves people. He now walks into people's laps and things like that. But most of those wild animals, they just want to be left alone. And so we offer them that.
What do you name the animals?
So every admission is after the person that rescued them. So Horton is named after his rescuer, who had the last name Horton.
But you all refrain, I imagine you refrain from naming the animals as to lessen the attachment that you can bond with them.
Well, I will say you're going to be attached to these animals because you're putting all you have into these guys. So even if it's a critical patient, you're feeding it 4 to 5 times a day, you're going to get attached. And I think the important part for us is really just maintaining their wildness, keeping their stress low. And if the volunteers want to name them and that makes them happy, I think more power to them.
Okay. I'm curious about what happens when you get an animal that's sick or injured and you pretty confirmed that it won't be able to recover. Like, not all of them are able to survive. What do you all do then?
So pretty much, again, wildlife, I think it is a hard concept to understand, but wild animals, they don't want to be in captivity. It's extremely stressful. It is ultimately a prison for these guys. So the majority of them are humanely euthanized. So we work with a veterinarian to make sure, just like you would with a dog and cat, that they go out very peacefully. It's a nice, peaceful death. Really, I would say the one animal that we have kept has been Horton, but that is because he showed us that he really adapted well to captivity. So if there was ever another animal that enjoyed it, I would say certainly we'd place it at an education facility similar to ours, but otherwise we do provide them with a humane euthanasia.
Molly, have you been in that situation before?
I've definitely worked with a lot of animals that haven't ended up making it and being able to be released. A lot of times it's difficult to be in that position, but ultimately you have to think what's best for the animal. We don't want to make them a prisoner for the rest of their life. We don't want to keep them injured and just think they're going to make it, because we know for certain they're not going to. So thinking as empathetic as possible, you don't want them to suffer. So we do have to put them down, and that can be hard, but it's for the best.
Has it been hard on volunteers?
I think so. I mean, it's not an easy concept in anything. I've euthanized thousands of animals in my life, and I still cry for every single one of them. So I imagine it's not really something that's easy, even if it's best for the animal. Yeah. It's still hard toll.
So on the brighter side, say an animal fully recovers. How do you know when they are ready to be released?
We have a whole lot of standards. They need to behave properly. They need to, along with behavior, physically be fit. There's a few different criteria that every wildlife rehabilitator needs to meet. They should not be habituated by any means. And then you also want to think about the habitat. So if it is an urban raccoon, if it needs to go back to an urban place, it doesn't know how to survive in the woods at that point. And, that's one of the reasons we say don't trap and relocate, because they're not going to know how to survive in the woods, even though we think they should be able to. That's not what's best for them ultimately.
Talk about trap and relocate. This is how far I go. I go to my car and I see like an ant on the windshield when I'm like a half a mile down the road. And I'm like, oh man, you can't be here, buddy. And if I just like get him off, how is he going to find his way back to his colony? Sometimes I take the time to drive back to make sure that they get back closer, at least in the parking lot. That's the area where they can go to.
I love that.
I try.
I love it.
I try. Okay, well, where do you, talk to me about the process of releasing an animal back into the wild. What does that look like?
So we do what we call a buffered release. We don't necessarily just go out to their appropriate environment. Sometimes we put them right back where we found them, but we give them time to adjust in an enclosure and then kind of open up the enclosure and let them leave at their own time. We're not grabbing them and throwing them into the air, because we don't want them to be super stressed, fight or flight. We want them to take a minute to understand their surroundings, get used to their environment, and realize, oh, okay, I'm home. And really, it's animal dependent. But like Molly said, we have tracked a lot of our releases. So we had a purple martin that we put back at the colony at the Nissan Stadium, and it was tracked a month later, which is really a great thing. But we did the same thing with that. And then a lot of turtles will do kind of soft release enclosures where they stay in there for 3 weeks and then kind of open up the door and let them slowly wander off themselves. And that tends to work well.
Molly, what does it feel like to successfully rehabilitate an animal and to release it into the wild?
I mean, the feeling is indescribable, I would say. It's something that I find such passion for, and that's why I'm in this field, is because watching an animal's journey from beginning to end of admission to release is incredible. They're able to overcome wounds that I don't feel like I would overcome, because it takes a lot of guts to be able to be sturdy and rehabilitate and be able to recover from these grave injuries. So I am very proud to be able to be a part of their journey, and I am so excited to be able to continue my career in that.
What are your hopes for the animals that you get to send back out into the wild?
well, I hope they live a very long and fruitful life. And for our animals that are in decline here in Tennessee, I hope that they have lots of babies.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, what do you want listeners who are listening right now, what do you want them to know about the wildlife rescue and rehabilitation process?
I would just say, it all starts at the beginning of the actual coexisting issue. And so if you can understand that you have wildlife in your yard, you have box turtles, baby bunnies, just by doing things like looking before you mow or preventing any window strikes, those types of things will make a huge difference for the wildlife, their mortality and everything. It will make our jobs a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Well, Debbie Ceicys is the director of the Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center, and Molly Mays is the wildlife educator and program coordinator for Nashville Wildlife Conservation Center. Thank you both for being here, and thanks for what you're doing. I know all the animals really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about wildlife here in Middle Tennessee and talk about how we all can help protect and prevent injuries to our wild neighbors. Stay tuned. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. All right, today we're talking about wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, and release here in Middle Tennessee. All right, so joining us now to continue the conversation about what we can do to protect animals from harm in the first place is Stasia Kudrez. She is the executive director of Harmony Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. And we want to welcome back Joanna Johnson, the animal care manager at Walden's Puddle. Stasia, thank you for being here. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, and it's an absolute treat for us. And Joanna, thank you for sticking around.
Yes.
Happy to have you back. Stasia, tell us about Harmony Wildlife. Tell us what kind of animals does Harmony care for?
So Harmony Wildlife is very similar to Walden's Puddle. We've been around since 1992, but we reopened from Fairview and into West Nashville a couple of years ago. Right now, we are treating about 1,000 animals a year. And as Joanna mentioned, it's just growing because as people learn about you, they start calling you. We are limited by our size, so that's about the max that we can do. But I think that the bigger picture is not how many animals we take care of, but how many phone calls and communications we get. We get as many as 4,000 a month now.
Wow.
People. I know, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
We're just doing it all day, and every day of the week, we're helping people figure out what to do when they find an animal. And the majority of the time, we don't want that animal to come in. I mean, Joanna doesn't want another bobcat kitten to take care of. We want that animal, if it's okay, to go back out and live in its natural place. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work that we do is education with the public. The other thing we do is we're focused on education. So kind of like Debbie and her group, we are also doing programs. We have Frodo, our Virginia opossum, and he's been doing programs for a few years. And we now have, and thanks to Joanna, she helped us with this, we have Sweet Potato, our new...
Sweet Potato.
Sweet Potato. She's our new Eastern box turtle, and she is going to be doing programs for us soon. And just one thing that I'm super excited about is that we've been really focused on trying to help reach underserved audiences. And so this year we just launched a program where we're doing programming specifically for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Okay. So we just had our first ASL interpreted supported program last week. So I'm really excited about all the things that we're doing at Harmony Wildlife.
How did the program last week go?
Oh, it was fantastic. We weren't sure. It was our launch, and we had 13 kids. It was through the Bridges program here in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. This club called Sertoma helped us start the program, and then we were able to partner and go over to Bridges. And these kids had an hour of just nonstop questions and telling us stories about the animals that they found and what they saved and what they loved, and just getting kids excited about nature and seeing the animals and talking about them. It's the world to us. That's what we love to do. That
is fantastic. Okay, so as I understand it, all of the rescues, you all work together,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so is it easy you pick up a phone and coordinate care for all of the animals? I mean, you're getting 4,000 calls a month. You know, how do you guys coordinate with each other?
100%. I mean, we're talking all the time.
Yes.
And I mean, we couldn't do it without Walden's Puddle. So thank you, Joanna.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. Can you give an example of how we work together?
It is extremely difficult dealing with the calls that we get from the public and then having to, reach out possibly to everyone in Tennessee to see if we can transfer an animal to someone or they have a singleton that they can send to us. So it just takes up a lot of time mainly, but there's definitely times where, Stasia, Harmony, they have a raptor that they don't have space for in their flight barn, but we have our flight barn. So they can transfer it to us after they raise it. And so there's a lot of working together like that is really, really just helped the Nashville community rehab.
Thank you again for helping us with that. It takes a village to do this. Another thing that might happen, for example, if we have an American kestrel come in, they're really cute little hawks. But they do better when they are raised with another kestrel. So one of the things that we might do is reach out to Joanna or any of the other rehabs in the state of Tennessee that are able to care for the animal to see if somebody has another singleton that we could transfer. And even though we, love the animals and we want to take care of them, if that animal will do better in a different facility, in a different scenario, we will do that transfer. It's not about who has the most or who has the coolest species. It's about figuring out case by case where that animal has the best potential outcome. So that's our sort of our guiding philosophy.
You guys said something about flight barns. I imagine they're for animals and birds, raptors and hawks. How big are your flight barns?
Our largest one is 100 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love to go see that.
It's pretty cool.
That sounds really cool. All right, Stacia, tell me real briefly, how'd you get into this work?
Well, in 2000, I was driving down the road in Kingston Springs, and I saw this dead animal on the road, and I saw this little thing running around, and I said, "Stop the car!" And then I pulled off, and it was a mother opossum that had been hit by a car, presumably, and she had one surviving baby. So I picked it up, and I said, "What in the world am I going to do with this thing?" So, and that was the start of the journey. And through that, I connected with my dear friend and mentor, Carol Burgess. She's the founder of Harmony Wildlife. She's actually been doing rehab since the 1980s. And I started volunteering for her in the year 2000. And I eventually started spending every weekend and days of the week there helping her after work. And then fast forward to a few years ago, we just decided that we were going to reopen it in West Nashville. Okay. So that's how I got started doing it. And it's just my happy place.
I can tell you're smiling from ear to ear. It's a total happy place. All right, but you both get these animals that need help or are sick or injured. What are some of the most common injuries or illnesses that you see in both of your facilities?
So one of them is definitely being hit by a car. That is extremely common for a lot of turtles and mammals and birds even. Let's see. And then we have a lot of animals hit by lawnmowers, babies that were orphaned from people cutting down trees. We get our mange foxes, a secondary issue with rodenticides that have been put out. A lot of the issue is habitat loss and fragmentation. We get some animals where their little section of wildlife was completely destroyed, and now it's just wandering around and slowly dying and emaciated.
Stacia?
Well, the other big thing that we get, all of those things, and honestly, it's domestic cats for us. So that is probably the number one cause. And I love cats. I love pets. I've been a cat owner. I'm now a dog owner. But one of the primary issues is that people allow their their cats to go outdoors. And cats are natural predators. They are not part of this world. They're outdoor world here, native to Tennessee, and they're just wired to hunt, and they're really good at it. So it's estimated that they kill, I think, about 3 billion songbirds in the United States every single year, plus countless of other mammals. So a very large percentage of the animals that we get are people who call us because their cat has caught a bird in their bird feeder, and it's a strange disconnect because the people care. They bring the animal to us, and they're very concerned about us saving the rabbit or the bird or the chipmunk that's been caught. but at the same time, they won't consider keeping their cat inside. And it's truly a puzzle. I think that a lot of it just comes with this idea that to be a good cat owner, they're happier outside. But I would say that to be a responsible pet owner and cat owner, it's hard work, but it would be to give that cat the stimulation and the enrichment and the things that they would need to keep them happy to be inside. Or catios.
Yes.
So, Joanna, what is a catio?
A catio, I mean, basically, if you have an outdoor porch, you can get it screened in with hardware cloth, and just let your cat stay out in the catio. They still get to go outside. You can make it as big as you want, as big as you're able. And then, so they get their outdoor time, but they can't go off hunting down some birds.
I just want full disclosure for all the audience. I am people. I am people.
You're
People
still good
are
human.
me.
You're still good human, Khalil.
You know, I'm trying. It's cold now. I just having as I was doing the research for this, reading what our producers, the interviews that they had with you all, I'm looking at the cats. Like, guys, it's going to be a very difficult spring and summer, but we're going to take the winter to get used to it and adjust it.
I mean, they will love you more. They'll be that much more bonded to you, and it's honestly safer for those animals to keep them inside.
Okay. All right. Now, you both work to educate the public about wildlife and to prevent injuries. What do the education outreach efforts look like?
Okay, I'll take it. Lots of ways. Well, for example, when I get an invitation to be on This Is Nashville, this is amazing. So I'm really excited about that. We do a lot of work. We have our website. We have our monthly email newsletters. We have our programs with schools, which we are now focusing in on growing. We also do different community events. So our next one is coming up. It's actually at Jackalope Brewery, and it's going to be on November 16th, I believe. We're still in the planning stages, where we'll have a day that's open for families, for people to come and learn about Tennessee native wildlife and, and get to kind of experience different activities. Doing things like we're going to be dissecting owl pellets and looking at feathers under UV lights. We had our first one last in the wintertime. We had more than 300 people show up, and it was crazy. So that's sort of, just pieces of our different education puzzle, and we're still kind of putting it together. We're relatively new to the West Nashville area. It's only been a couple of years. So I think we're starting to kind of get our legs, and people are learning about the work that we're doing, and hopefully we'll get to do even more.
That's right. All right, Joanna, what do your education efforts look like?
So one of the biggest ways we educate the public is through the calls that we get. Every individual that calls, a lot of times it's an animal that needs to be left alone, or they can be reunited, renested. And so speaking with that individual is a great way. They learn a little bit new information. They can go spread it to their neighbors. Like cats probably shouldn't be outside. Yes. If someone brings in a bird like that, we can take that time to educate them on the reasons why their cats should be inside. And so with our 3,500 animals a year, that's reaching a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And then we hope that they will continue to spread that information. What
can we do day to day to kind of help prevent window strikes from birds, running into windows and buildings and, auto accidents and things?
Oh, I've got tips.
Yep.
Give them to us. We got like a minute and a half.
Okay. Well, the first one is, y'all, when you're like having apple core and you're like, what do I do? And you're like, if I throw it inside the road, it's not litter. It's just going to help feed an animal. Mm-hmm. Well, that actually creates so many problems for us, because when you throw food waste on the side of the road, even if it's like quote unquote good waste, it attracts rodents, which then attract the owls and the hawks and other raptors that come and want to eat it.
Gotcha.
And that's why we get so many car strikes. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many owls have come in, cute little screech owls and barred owls and great horns and hawks that have hit the cars. And then the second thing with bird feeders is to position them not close, at least 10 feet away from your windows in your home. And they also have these cool little stickers that you can put on your windows that have UV and reflective light that will prevent the birds, will help the birds see that it's a window. And you can buy them online. You can buy them at local stores. Like there's a birding store called the Wood Thrush Shop that sells them. They're not expensive. You just stick them on the windows, and it really does. At my house, it's really eliminated most of my window strikes.
That's really awesome.
Can I do some rapid fire ones?
Rapid fire.
All right. So you can do the decals.
Yep.
You can do helping migrating birds. You can turn off your outdoor lights at night you can close your curtains or your blinds.
Oh no, we need more time.
I know, I hear the music.
We need more time.
We'll have a list on this episode's web post when you go to thisisnashville.org. Stager Kudras is the executive director of Harmony Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, and Johanna Johnson is the animal care manager for Walden's Puddle. Thank you both so much for being here. Really appreciate it and the work that you're doing. All right, y'all, before we leave, I do want to let you know about the Music City Wheels Charity Golf Tournament. It takes place Friday, October 5th at Greystone. To find out more, go to givebutter.com/KA8TUC. And October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You can find out more information by checking them out at Fit Crawl on Instagram. Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Katherine Ceicys, directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. As always, listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. Conversation never ends here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. So fill out our quick survey online if you want to or not. It's up to you. You can also call to leave us a message, 615-751-2500. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. And be good to each other and the animals, too.